Welcome to the sixth episode of Farther Along. In this episode, we're going to look at the Fifth Commandment and see what does it mean, and then what further can we extrapolate from this. And we will see that the Fifth Commandment is one of the hardest commandments to keep. But then again, I'm probably going to say that about a lot of the others as well. But the Fifth Commandment, you shall not murder. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we do not hurt or harm our neighbor in his body, but help and support him in every physical need. Very simple. We don't not only kill, but don't harm or bring harm or allow harm, as Luther will tell us in the Large Catechism. But let's go to the words of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 5, starting in verse 21. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says you fool will be liable to the hell of fire. So if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. Jesus really makes this a much more difficult commandment than we think of when we think of you shall not murder. Because it's not only murder, but if you're angry, if you insult your brother, if you say you fool, you are liable to the judgment of hellfire. And this is where we have issues in the Christian congregation, is that we have this animosity that can boil up sometimes. We've heard it recently in both my sermon as well as Seminary Bergsted's sermon this past week as to just how that happens in Christian congregations, that Satan gets his foothold in there. And we wonder, how can this be? Because it's so easy. It is so easy to get angry. It is so easy to get frustrated with people. It is so easy to think of people as fools and insult them. And yet this is also the passage that people go to in various churches, and I've seen this in numerous Missouri Synod churches, where they have the passing of the peace, which we haven't done since I've been here. I'm not sure if it was done pre-COVID at Our Savior. It's been done at other congregations that I have been at. But they would not have it at the beginning of the service. They would have it between the offering and the Lord's Supper, to give the opportunity for reconciliation before we come to the altar of our Lord. You citing these verses, that leave your gift behind and to go reconcile with your brother, and then go up to the altar. I've always thought that disrupts the flow of the service, because now all of a sudden you've got 50, 60, 100 people getting up and moving around, and sometimes literally moving all around the sanctuary to greet people. And well, like I said, then it's like herding cats, bringing everybody back together so we can get from the solemnness of taking the offering to the solemnness of getting ready for communion. So when I've had it, I've tried to have it at the beginning of the service, where it doesn't have as much a disruptive flow. We've had Jesus expound on this and make it a lot harder. Let's look at what Martin Luther has to say in the Large Catechism, beginning in paragraph 188. Therefore, the entire sum of what it means not to murder is to be impressed most clearly upon the simple-minded, Deuteronomy 6:7. In the first place, we must harm no one, either with our hand or by deed. We must not use our tongue to instigate or counsel harm. We must neither use nor agree to use any means or methods by which another person may be injured. Finally, the heart must not be ill-disposed toward anyone or wish another person ill in anger and hatred. Then body and soul may be innocent toward everyone, but especially toward those who wish you evil or inflict such things upon you. For to do evil to someone who wishes you good and does you good is not human, but devilish. So we'll talk this first point here for a second. Harm no one, give counsel to no one, not even, as he will go on to say, not even look the other way as somebody else harms someone. That's also our breaking of the fifth commandment. But we'll get to that in a moment. All right, getting back into the large catechism here. Second, a person who does evil to his neighbor is not the only one guilty under this commandment. It also applies to everyone who can do his neighbor good, prevent or resist evil, defend and save his neighbor so that no bodily harm or hurt happen to him, yet does not do this. James 2:15-16. If therefore you send away someone who is naked when you could clothe them, you have caused him to freeze to death. If you see someone suffer hunger and you do not give him food, you have caused him to starve. So also, if you see anyone innocently sentenced to death or in similar distress and do not save him, although you know ways and means to do so, you have killed him. It will not work for you to make the excuse that you did not provide any help, counsel, or aid to harm him. For you have withheld your love from him and deprived him of the benefit by which his life would have been saved. So, as I said a moment ago, this is that not only not doing it ourselves, but turning a blind eye when we could actually help. So Luther continues, God also rightly calls all people murderers who do not provide counsel and help in distress and danger of body and life. He will pass a most terrible sentence upon them in the last day, as Christ himself has announced that he will say, I was hungry and you gave me no food. I was thirsty and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger and you did not welcome me, naked and you did not clothe me, sick and in prison and you did not visit me. Matthew 25:42-43. This means you have allowed me and mine to die of hunger, thirst, and cold. You have allowed the wild beast to tear us to pieces or left us to rot in prison or perish in distress. What else is that but to rebuke them as murderers and bloodhounds? For although you have not actually done all this to someone, you have still, so far as you were concerned, let him wither and perish in misfortune. It is just as if I saw someone navigating, laboring in deep water, or one falling into fire, and could extend to him the hand to pull him out and save him, and yet refuse to do it. How would I look, even in the eyes of the world? Just like a murderer and a criminal. Therefore, it is God's ultimate purpose that we let harm come to no one, but show him all good and love. As we have said, this commandment is especially directed toward those who are enemies, for to do good to our friends is an ordinary heathen virtue, as Christ says in Matthew 5:46. So here Luther, in his second part of what it means to not murder, gives us a lot to chew on. That it is not only, again, that we have not physically done it, we have not told people how to do it, but we have turned a blind eye when we could help. And all too often that is very easy to do. You go into Chicago, you go into Indianapolis, you go into Champaign, and you see the people at the red lights with their signs up, homeless, hungry, whatever their story is. And do you know whether it's true or not? No. But it is so easy to just turn a blind eye, not to look at them, not to give them eye contact. And I'm guilty of it too. And just, I just don't have time to deal with it. I hope somebody else does. And honestly, I do hope that somebody else does, if they are truly in need. But I've lived in many places where, that is the easy way to make money. It's a lot easier than going and working a job. But as we're looking at this week, we're in the mid-90s for a lot of the week, and it's like, who wants to stand out there with a sign to get money when they could work, even flipping burgers at McDonald's or Burger King or something. Low heat in the kitchen, but still better than standing outside and baking on the concrete and asphalt. But that's just me. All right, so as we look to the church fathers, we look to this anonymous work that is a book on Matthew that just never got finished, never signed. It's just been passed down through the church. But in homily 11 of that book, it takes up this section that we talked about in Matthew. This fulfilling of the law, depending on circumstances, fell naturally into place, As Christ did and taught these things, he fulfilled the law. He did not do away with it. For Christ's commandment is not contrary to the law, but broader than the law. Christ's commandment contains the law, but the law does not contain Christ's commandment. Therefore, whoever fulfills the commandments of Christ implicitly fulfills the commandments of the law. For one who does not get hungry or angry is much less capable of killing. But one who fulfills what the law commands does not completely fulfill what Christ commands. Often a person will not kill because of fear of reprisal, but he will get angry. Do you see then that the fulfilled law has the benefit of not being abolished? Consequently, without these commandments of Christ, the commandments of the law cannot stand. For if the freedom to get angry is allowed, there are grounds for committing murder. For murder is generated by anger. Take away the anger, and there will be no murder. Therefore, whoever gets angry without cause commits murder with respect to the will, even if he does not actually do so of fear of reprisal. The remorse may not be the same as if he had committed the deed, but such a sin matches the one who gets angry. Thus John in his canonical epistle says, "Everyone who hates his brother without cause is a murderer." 1 John 3:15. Consider the wisdom of Christ. Wanting to show that he is the God who once spoke in the law and who now commands by grace, he placed that commandment before all others in the law. And now he placed it at the beginning of his commandments. It was the first written in the law, "You shall not murder," Exodus 20:13. He immediately begins with murder, so that through a harmony between commandments, he is found to be the author of law and of grace. Everyone who is angry with his brother without cause shall be liable to judgment. We saw in Matthew 5:22. Therefore, whoever gets angry with cause will not be liable. For if there is no anger, teaching will be of no use, nor will judgments be necessary, nor will criminal actions have to be held in restraint. Therefore, just anger is the mother of discipline. Those who get angry with cause not only do not sin, but unless they get angry, they do sin. Moreover, irrational patience sows the seeds of vice, nurtures negligence, and encourages not only the wicked, but also the good to do evil. Although a wicked person may be rebuked, he is not made to change his ways, but a good person, unless he is rebuked, will come to ruin because evil rather than good prevails in his body. Anger with cause is not anger, but judgment. It gets to be a little round and round here, but it is all about, do you have cause to be angry? Is there a reason to be angry? Or is it just the irrational anger of, the excuses of, they did this to me, or they said that, or I heard that they said this. But did they actually do something to you? Have they actually committed something against you? Then no, you have no reason to be angry. But if they have, it's not just anger. This is like the Psalm says, be angry, but do not sin. We heard this in Ephesians last month. What it means to be angry with cause. This is judgment. This is where the place of the judgment sits. All right, so let's look at the scriptures that have been cited here but not quoted. Deuteronomy 6:7, as Moses is given the great Shema, the Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. Continues on talking about teaching the children. And in verse 7 he says, you shall teach them diligently to your children, and talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. Basically, we are always to be talking about the things of the Lord. James chapter 2, 15 and 16. If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, be warmed and filled, without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? I mean, yes, you see somebody who is, poorly dressed, naked, or, going hungry, and you go, the Lord clothe you and feed you, and you do nothing about that. It's like, what good is that? All right, then last, Matthew 5:46. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? This going back to the love and the call to not be angry and to not insult is because the other person is your enemy. Not the one you love, but the one who has done you wrong. The one who has put himself against you. But if you love the ones who love you, what good is that? It just cycles around and just keeps going back and forth. It doesn't do anything. It's like the hamster in the wheel, just running and running and running, but never getting anywhere. All right, so the study questions that are down below, 2 of them this week. Jesus uses the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount to strengthen our understanding of the law. How does Jesus make the law harder? And then, secondly, how is the Fifth Commandment the greatest source of sins of omission? Feel free to comment down below and start the dialogue as to these things, because we are in the midst of trying to bring ourselves farther along down the road, running the race that Jesus has taught us, being more and more informed of what he has for us. Until next time, I thank you for being here, for going farther along with me. And again, discuss with the questions below.